Hi, this is Kelly Caldwell on Those Were the Days today. Today I'd like to visit with David Collie and Vivian Celander. And how are you people today?
Fine.
Real good. Now, David, you and Vivian are brother and sister, right?
Right.
Maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about your parents, Vivian and David. Could you tell us about your mother and your dad and a little bit about them?
Vivian's got it pretty well written down.
Okay.
So.
Our dad was born, David Collie was born September the 2nd, 1884 in Moncton, Scotland. In 1909 he came to Montana by boat and went to work at the Fulton Ranch. My mother, Edna Marshall, born June the 14th, 1888 in B Township, Wisconsin. Her mother died in 1904, so she made her home with her grandparents. She came to Montana in April 18th, 1910, and filed a claim on O'Fallon Creek, 30 miles south of Ismay. There were 14 or 15 single girls homesteading within the radius of 15 miles. Also several boys. There was good times and hard times. One thing I can remember her telling was baking baking powder biscuits, and she forgot the baking powder. So one of the boys came along, and they took and tacked them up under the eaves on the outside of the house, and they stayed there for ages and ages till the birds had them eat them. And one other time, she stopped at a homestead shack, which was Bert Bruce's. He had a tub full of socks, soaking, so she took them all out and tied them in knots and put them back in the water. While my dad was courting my mother, he was helping her do dishes one evening. And she would wash the same dishes over and over again. And finally he said, "How many of these damn dishes do you have?" And then she really laughed. David and Edna was married. May the 6th, 1915 at the Davy Bickle Senior Residence in Ismay, and they rode the train to Miles City for their honeymoon. Dad became an American citizen on August 28, 1914. To this reunion, 6 children were born: Mary, David, Daisy, twins, first twins to be born in Ismay, Vivian, Goldie, and Alec. We went to school our first 4 years in Ismay, then to the McKinsey School, and had 4 miles to drive with horse and buggy or sled in the wintertime. One day we went to school. It was 40 below, and the postmaster at McKinsey Post Office said, "Are you damn kids crazy to be out in this weather?" The teacher didn't show up, so we went home. The teacher was Leila Crow and boarded at the Fulton Ranch and had 4 miles to ride horseback. While we're on the subject of Ismay, at that time it was a boom town, and there was about 560 residents, 2 banks, 2 restaurants, 2 stores, 3 cafes,
3 saloons. When they went to Miles City to get married, Dad had a suitcase with him. When he got to Miles City open, all he had in it was a horseshoe. That's all he had in that suitcase.
What happened to all his belongings?
Well, that's all he took with him.
Maybe he figured that's all he needed was a horseshoe, huh?
For good luck, I guess.
I know Ismay at one time, you mentioned now there was, what, 500 and some people there?
560.
They were quite a community then.
It was the biggest shipping point west of Chicago at one time. That's why they called it Little Chicago at one time when they wrote that one book.
Well, then Ismay, was that a main stop for the Milwaukee?
All right, that's right.
And then everybody trailed their cows in there to ship them out on the train, too.
The people from the south of Ismay and around the Ismay area?
Yeah, and north of Ismay.
And then the people over here, most of them trailed over to Marmot?
Yeah. But they used to come in there from the Wyoming line and trail them up there to Ismay.
Now, anybody like south of the Folkses, the Folkses' house was always the first overnight stop.
Do you remember a lot of companies stopping by?
Oh, yes.
We have more there, Vivian.
Not more.
Okay.
Okay. Mary and we all graduated from the 8th grade from the McKinsey School. Mary and Daisy graduated from Plevna High. Vivian, Goldie, and Alec graduated from Baker High. Davy didn't go to high school. He went to work for Gus Range in 1935 until he went to the Army in April 1942. He never had one furlough and discharged in September 1943 5, returning to the Grange Ranch. Do you want to add something on your while you was in the service?
The 3.5 years that I was in the service, not counting them, I was at Ranges 41 years. That's a long time. I was 16 when I first rode over there. I was going to, Dad was taking me to Miles City to join the CC camp. That's when the CCs was going.
That had been during the Depression, back in the mid-30s?
Yeah. And we just come to a gate, and here Gus Range was coming down. He was coming down and looked to see if I'd go to work for him. So I went to work, so I never got to CC camp.
And that's as far as you got.
That's
for
as far
quite
as
a
I
few
got.
Years.
Yeah, 41 years.
How about during the service, David? Where did you go there?
Well, I started out in Fort Lewis, Washington. Then they sent me down to California. Then they sent me to Massachusetts. Then we landed in Scotland, went down to England. Then there was 30 days going to North Africa, and over to Italy, and over to France, up into Germany, and back to France.
So that went on all during the war there.
Yeah.
I imagine when you landed in Scotland, you had some thoughts about your dad going through your
I
past.
went to his hometown one time, and I asked at the post office if they knew any of my folks. Well, I found out afterwards that was a poor place to ask during the war. But ask anybody else, they would have told me, because I was right there in his hometown, so I had a relation there, but never did get to see him.
Because now your dad did come directly from Scotland.
Moncton, Scotland.
What part of Scotland?
Well, the town is Moncton, but I don't know. It's not too far from Glasgow.
Oh,
But I don't know what direction now.
And what year how old was your dad when he came over to the United States?
25.
Well, he was 25, and he came over specifically to Homestead?
No, he came over, well, see, Fulton's had relatives over there. And through them, he come to work at the Fulton Ranch, Bill Fulton Ranch. So that's how come.
Okay. Now, sorry, Dave, I kind of interrupted you there.
Oh,
No, that's
okay.
fine. We wanted you to do that.
Yeah.
When I got into the Scotland part.
Okay.
Yeah, I never got wounded or anything like that. I had appendicitis, but I guess couldn't call that wounded very much.
Did they give you a little break, huh?
Yeah.
Well, you worked, what, in the boat regiment, unloading
Yeah.
boats?
I think we was the lost battalion. I don't think they knowed what to do is because they kept changing us around all the time. When we landed in Scotland, we was painting castle. When we went to England, we was unloading boats. And then we unloaded boats in Africa and in Italy. Then in France, we was building truck crates to go to Japan. Then when we got up in Germany, we was building bridges. So we was a jack of all trades and a master of none, I guess.
Were there other guys from the area that were in your same company or same battalion?
There's one from, two from Ekalika, and Ivan Jardee and Walter White. I went together with them and come back with them, and Bill Rosenberg from Esme and Vic Silver from Miles City. So we was all right close together, see them all every once in a while.
And then when you came back, did you go back out onto the ranch?
Yeah.
And continued right on where you left off?
Yeah, sure did.
I think I've got that.
Oh, okay, Vivian.
Okay. In 1951, the folks retired and bought a home in Baker. On July 1955, the folks went to Scotland to visit his homeland, friends and relatives. First time he was back since he left in 1909. They returned home on September the 4th, 1955. So that was a memorable trip for them. My dad passed away February 1962 at the age of 78, and Mother continued living in their home till she passed away July the 4th, 1985 at the age of 97. Before my mother passed away, we had 2 5-generation pictures taken. Mother, Vivian, daughter June, and her son Tom, and his twins, Brianne and Britt Owens. And then the second one was Mother, Vivian, daughter June, her daughter Barb, and son Justin Clauser. She had 17 grandchildren and 25 great-grandchildren and 4 great-great-grandchildren. Mary, my oldest sister, married Bud McKay in June 1940. To this reunion, 7 children were born. Mary, Betty, Jim, John, Carol, Donald, and Edith. They live on Bud's dad's place, later buying part of it. Bud passed away and Mary still lives there. Daisy married Walter McNanny in 1947. They had 3 children, Vivian, Dave, Debbie, and they live in Hardin, Montana. David married Donna Baker in 1977, no children. He now makes his home in Baker in my mother's house. Vivian married Denzel Krieger, June 1940. They had 2 children, June and Virginia. Denzel went to the service in August 1944 and was killed in action, crossing the Saarbrücken line into Germany on February 18, 1945. In 1962, Vivian married Edward Celander, and they have 1 child, Karen. She lives in Baker. Edward passed away May the 1st, 1987. Goldie married Frank Sparks. They have 3 boys, James, Tom, and Donald. They live on the old Wasnick place south of Plevna. Alec married Lois Buckland in 1947, and they still live on my mother's homestead and have built it up. About 20 years ago, they just tore down Mother's homestead shack, which has been standing and used for a shop all these years.
Okay. And now, Vivian, you mentioned your husband was Eddie Celander.
Right.
And where did you run across Eddie at? Going to school?
Oh no, because we didn't get married till 62. No, I don't know. I guess at a dance or something we met, and then we got married.
Oh, okay.
And then we lived on his place out in the Webster community for 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Then we retired and moved back to Baker, and it's at my same old house, and I'm still living there.
Good to be at home, huh?
Yeah, right.
And Dave, you're living in your mother's house then, here in Baker.
Yeah. Cyclone hit it at home in 27, and it took the barn and the granary we had and a chicken house, a double-boarded chicken house. It was just room enough to walk between the chicken house and Mother's homestead shack. And all it done when it took it up in the air was take 2 boards off, and you could push over with 1 hand, and it still stood there. And the chickens put it in the chicken coop in 4 pieces, the 4 sides, the 5 pieces, and the roof. A lot of windows was still in it. A lot of chickens never had a feather in it running around. Some of them never had a gut in them. That's what the cyclone will do.
And that you hit in 27?
27.
Uh-huh.
It was in July, I remember, because I was going with Dad over to Fulton's to a school meeting, and I run down to open the gate because he was driving the Model T, and I said, no, I think I better stay home. And I run and told Mother she was milking, and I said, there's a funny-looking cloud. She said, head for the cellar, so that's what we did.
Uh-huh.
But it sure done a lot of damage.
What, that would have been in the summertime then?
Yeah, July in 27.
And then did you live out there on the place then too during the Depression years you mentioned?
Well, I lived there until 35, and then I went to work for Gus Drains. And I worked there in 35, and then 36 was a dry year. I went to Dakota and hayed in the fall, and then when I come back in the fall of 36, I went back to work for Granger. Mm-hmm. So I've been there pretty much off and on, except the 3 years I was in the service, for 41 years.
You mentioned, Vivian, going to school when it was 40 below zero, and when you got there, there was nobody there, no teacher, nothing.
Well,
how far did you have to go?
We had 4 miles, but we didn't go to the schoolhouse. We stopped at the post office first, and that's where the old postmaster said, "Are you kids crazy being out in that weather?" So we stayed, got warmed up, and then we turned around and went home.
Was that about the halfway point?
Well, no, just about a half a mile from the post office to the schoolhouse.
Oh,
The school teacher had to ride by the post office to get to the school, so he knew that she hadn't come by yet. Well, one time earlier, when we went to school, that's when Harold DeBree was the postmaster, and he said, "You kids know how cold it is?" And we said, "No." He said, "It's 62 below zero." Didn't bother us, and it was used to it.
You just keep on piling on more clothes?
More clothes. We run over her with a buggy one time, and she didn't even know it. She had old Flynn sheepskin coat on her, bachelor, great big old long sheep's coat. It was about 2 feet too long, but she was wearing it. She was getting cold, so we pushed her out and run over with the buggy. We didn't intend to, but that's what happened.
It didn't hurt a bit, huh?
No, didn't even feel it.
Didn't even know when I hit the ground.
You were just too numb, huh?
Too numb and too many clothes on.
Well, Dave, you were a twin then.
That's right. Yeah, first twin born in Esme in room 14 in 1918.
In room 14?
Yeah.
And that was there a hospital there?
No, just the doctor, Dr. Prairie.
And room 14 was
Well, I don't know. That's what Mother said. It was in room 14. I don't remember it, but I was there, I guess.
Yeah, I don't think you'd remember an awful lot about it.
Not too much.
Maybe it was like a clinic with the rooms numbered or something. I don't know.
Well, the rooms were all
hotel.
numbered. I forget how many rooms is in there.
Well, I
but there was-
imagine it was in the hotel then, wasn't it?
Yeah, in the hotel. Yeah. The Bracket Hotel.
Well, when did ISME start to kind of go downhill then, as far as what stopped the boom from
Well, when the
Highway 12.
Highway 12?
Highway 12.
highway didn't come in until the 30s, but after the 30s, after the crash, stock market in 29, then it started going down.
Mhm.
And from then on into the 30s, it just dwindled to nothing. And then I think it was in 33 when they put the highway through and it missed Disney. And then that really made it die out.
Both banks went bankrupt. And there they just kept going downhill. Now I think there's a population of 10.
Yeah.
And the post office. The post office is still there, but everything else is nothing. No garages, no filling stations, no depot, no nothing.
Well, you had all the services that you needed right out of ISME then.
Yeah.
Did you ever make it over to Baker or around?
No, it was,
No need to, I guess.
Well, it was always too far. It was only 30 miles to Ismail, and not further come to Baker. So.
because we always used the team and wagon in them days. And no, I think it was probably in 36 or 37 before I ever got to Baker, after I went to work, because we had no reason to come to Baker. We got everything we needed in Ismail. They had 2 lumber yards.
What about Plevna?
No, well, when we come to Baker, we'd come kind of miss Plevna, and then when you go to Mile City, you miss it. So I didn't hardly know Plevna existed until, I don't know, probably in the 40s.
Over in your country, or somebody in your family mentioned something one time about the pranksters that were played on each other, particularly on some of the young girls that were over there. And do you recall who it was that shipped off the names of several of the girls to kind of a Lonely Heart Club out in Minneapolis?
I've never heard that, but I know I remembered hearing about it when you mentioned it. Because Mother and a whole bunch of them, they was always pulling pranks. I know one time Mother was at a dance in Ekalika, and they called him the Big Kid. He was kind of sweet on the piano player. She slipped up behind him and put a pigtail on him. Here he goes a-prancing up there to the piano player, and everybody was laughing. They thought he was laughing at him, and when he found out, he wasn't very happy. I don't know if he ever found out who it was, but this pigtail just a swinging.
He didn't know he had a pigtail.
No, he didn't know he had it on there. But she was always pulling something like that.
Well, where did your mother come from? She was Wisconsin?
Yeah, close to Lancaster, Wisconsin.
And what brought her out in this country?
She just wanted to come west.
Well, her brother was out here in Homestead before my mother came, Archie Marshall. And so it would have been about 15 miles from where Archie homesteaded to where my mother homesteaded.
And where did she meet your dad at?
At Fulton Ranch. She worked for the Fulton Ranch too.
Oh, okay.
The way I get it, Dad was a hauling hay in the wintertime, and she'd come a-riding across the country, and she seen this hay racking team and no driver. So she rode up behind it and tied her horse up, got up on the hay rack, and there was a guy sleeping, so she just rolled him off in the snowbank. That's how she met.
kind of a quite an introduction. Huh?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Back in those early days, out on the homesteads and out on the ranches out there, Sunday afternoon, that was always kind of set aside for kind of get-togethers, wasn't it?
More or less, yeah. Either 4-H or picnics or ball games or something. We just made our own entertainment.
And David and Vivian, is there anything else you can think of that you would like to share here with us?
Well, I can't think of anything.
Well, I guess I'm about run down for now.
Just about, anyway. Huh?
Yeah.
And Dave, you're retired now?
Yes.
And where is the house here in Baker?
It's on 905 3rd Street West.
3rd Street West. Okay, about down toward the high school, or
right up close to the high school.
right in that area. And then Vivian, where is your home at?
I'm on 923 South, 1st Street West,
Uh-huh.
right across from the Lincoln School.
Oh, okay. You're just right down the block here. From
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. And you have one girl, Karen.
Mm-hmm.
And where's Karen? Here in Baker.
Yeah, she lives in Baker. And my oldest daughter, June, lives in Dickinson, and my middle daughter, Virginia, lives in Vilnius.
And David, you were married but had no children, right?
Yeah.
And tell us about your wife and where you met her.
Well, I needed a cook, so I advertised in the paper for a cook, and she answered the ad, and then we finally got married, and in '77, and then we bought the greenhouse in Miles City. I moved to Miles City in '78, and we bought the greenhouse, and things went from bad to worse. She got the checkbook, and I thought everything was going good, and because I had a little money, and with the place, see, the Drangers give me half the place when they passed away.
Oh, uh-huh.
And with the cattle I had and everything, it was assessed at right at $1 million. Well, she got rid of all of that, and when we left this country in '85, she owed $1 million, besides what she used up of mine. And I thought we was coming back. She said we're just going to Florida for a visit. Well, 2.5 years later, I finally come back and figured out I didn't have a cent, except the clothes I had on my back. And I wouldn't have got my clothes if it hadn't been for a neighbor down in Florida. After I come up here about 2 months, she called me and said, if you want anything in the house, you better do something, because your wife has never made the payments, and they're going to lose it and everything. They're going to have a sheriff's sale. So she went over and got my clothes. So that's the only reason I got my clothes. Other than that, I wouldn't have anything.
That didn't work out too good then.
No, and I guess not.
Well, David and Vivian, it's sure a pleasure to talk to you, and I know Eddie Celander. I knew Eddie.
Yes, real well, didn't you?
Yeah, I sure did. Him and my parents.
Him and his dad worked together for years. So.
And that place was down in the
Yes, that was
Willard area.
Well, Webster.
Webster community.
And that was his dad's homestead that he lived on, and I still have it.
When did Eddie's parents come out here in Homestead? Do you recall?
Oh, I don't.
Okay, well,
But that's where you that's where Eddie grew up. And then you met him. You moved out onto the
Yeah.
place. Okay. Well, David Collie and Vivian Celander, we want to sure thank you for joining us on Those Were the Days today.
Well, thank you very much.
Morning.
morning.
How are you today?
Good, how are you?
Looking at dirty movies again, huh?
Yeah.